I've played countless open-world survival games, and obviously some are better than others. I mean, not every game is going to be the next Minecraft, right? So when I first got Astroneer, I wasn't expecting much when I decided to boot it up. You know, just something like Minecraft, but in space, and also on a smaller budget. But when I finally landed on my first planet in the game, I was thoroughly disappointed. How do I place an oxygenator? Why is that the inventory button? What am I supposed to do? I give up. This game is stupid. My first time playing Astroneer wasn't exactly the best. Yet, just under a year earlier, I had my first experience with Subnautica, and I was able to get started fairly easily without much outside help. And now that I've played a game that I couldn't figure out, it does make me wonder why Subnautica's tutorial worked, and why Astroneer's crashed and burned. Why was I unable to play Astroneer? I think in order to understand the problems I have with Astroneer, we need to understand what makes a good tutorial for an open-world survival game. A good tutorial gives you an achievable goal right off the bat, and uses that goal as a reason to teach you the controls and systems of the game. Take Subnautica for example. As soon as you start the game, you are forced to put out a fire in the life pod you crash landed in, which you are given direct help with via button prompts and common knowledge. I mean, if you see a fire, you'd probably look for a fire extinguisher, right? Also, editing me here, in the opening cutscene of the game, you clearly see the fire extinguisher dislodge from its holder and roll to the other side of the life pod just before you black out. And as soon as you wake up, the first thing you see is a blazing fire to your left and a fire extinguisher right in front of you. I had no clue this game was so good at tutorials. But when you do put out the fire, the real tutorial begins. Your new goal is to repair your damaged life pod, which by looking at the fabricator on board, you'll find you need a repair tool. You'll spend the rest of the tutorial gathering the 3 ingredients necessary to make one, being some silicone rubber, cave sulfur, and titanium. While doing this, the game will teach you about its resource outcrops, food and water system, oxygen systems, various tools you'll craft while on the hunt for the repair tool, and more. All of this is in a safe, comfortable area with relatively no hostile creatures. Well, except for when you go into the caves to get the sulfur. Or into the kelp forest to get the silicone, but you get my point. Subnautica teaches its mechanics in an intuitive, simple, and fun way. Let's compare that to Astroneer. When you crash land on the first planet, you will walk towards a small platform near your base where you can find your first mission, to set up a base. You then get a few free items to help you with your journey, including an oxygen generator and your basic crafting table. You're then supposed to hook these up to the small shelter you've landed in. The way Astroneer goes about teaching its mechanics directly reminds me of CubeCraft Skyblock, with tiny missions that take little time to complete, if you know what you're doing. And this is the inherent problem I have with the way Astroneer teaches its game, because there's one crucial part I've neglected to mention with Astroneer's early game. While completing Subnautica's tutorial, you're slowly taught the controls of the game. If you're able to scan something with the scanner tool, a button prompt appears on screen. If you intend on breaking a resource outcrop, there's a button prompt for that too. The game's inventory will also show you the correct buttons to press to do the actions you want. You learn exactly what you need to know, exactly when you need to know it. Makes sense, right? It makes so much sense that you'd expect another open-world survival game, say Astroneer, to do the same thing, right? As it turns out, no. This is how Astroneer expects you to learn its controls. You get this one screen that explains the basic controls, and then you get nothing else for the rest of the game, as far as I'm aware. Astroneer doesn't even teach you what the main ingredients of the game look like, much less how to acquire them. The mission board tells you that you need something, and it's up to you to figure out what on earth it means. If you don't, then you're just stuck. Sucks to be you. While we're at it, I also want to point out that Astroneer's control scheme is very different from the norm in these games. For the sake of this example, I'm going to call Minecraft the norm since it's the most popular one out there. In Minecraft for Nintendo Switch, A is jump, X is to open your inventory, and your shoulder buttons are for using tools and punching things. In Astroneer, A is jump, B is to open your inventory, and Y is to use the terrain tool. I was not able to wrap my head around this because my brain was still used to Minecraft controls. Oh, but good news! Both Astroneer and Subnautica have options to change your button mappings in-game. Subnautica does this fairly well, and while I prefer more options, like the option to invert your camera controls, I am glad that the game changes its button prompts based on the mapping you've chosen. Astroneer? Of course not. So this creates an entirely new problem. With a changed button mapping, the game will give you the wrong instructions. The game says A is jump, but in reality, it's not, because you changed your button mapping. This is the one open-world survival game that I have seen neglect this. Heck, even Minecraft teaches its controls better than this hunk of junk. By default, you have small button prompts in the corner of your screen at all times telling you how to place and mine blocks, the two main things you'll be doing in the game. The only thing left to do is to teach you how to craft, which in Bedrock Edition is done through the recipe book, found when opening the inventory. Want another example? The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild's Great Plateau teaches you about the 4 Sheikah Slate runes, being Magnesis, Stasis, Cryonis, and the remote bombs. They're what you'll use to solve puzzles later on, and in order to leave the plateau, you'll have to complete a puzzle shrine centered around each one. The plateau also teaches you about the game's other smaller mechanics, like climbing, combat, and cooking. And here's the kicker. Every time a new action is introduced, like climbing or swinging a sword, the game will tell you how to do it via a button prompt. Astroneer does none of this. I don't know how many times I have to say this in order for you to understand, but pretty much every little thing that could have gone wrong with Astroneer's in quotes tutorial did. The only way to actually learn how to play the game is to watch somebody else play on the internet, and that's not something you want to have to do. But the thing that really irks me with Astroneer is the fact that it used to have these things I'm complaining about. When you crash landed on the first planet, it would give you some basic button prompts teaching you how to move, use the terrain tool, and more. But guess what? The devs removed it and replaced it with this card that looks like it came out of a 1990s video game manual. Why? And this is the part that I still don't get. Why remove the most important part of your game? And believe me, it is the most important part. No matter how good the rest of your game is, if your tutorial sucks, your game sucks because your players won't even make it through the first 10 minutes before giving up and playing something they actually enjoy. Here's a tip for future game developers out there. Put some actual thought and effort into teaching players the mechanics of your game, and don't just set it aside until the rest of your game is developed. If you don't, well, your game might fall into the same hole as Astroneer. And with that, thank you all for watching the video. Don't forget to leave a like on your way out, and subscribe if you want to see more. Leave a comment so I know you like to see this kind of content, and I might start making more stuff like this. Take care, and I'll see you another time. Bye for now.